Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Our team consists of engineers, pilots, as well as drone operators. And for a lot of the work we do, we use quite complicated and sophisticated equipment, including aircraft. We generally develop checklists to help us prepare and operate our equipment more effectively and more safely. So it's only natural when we started to use our DJI FPV that our team will develop a checklist for it. And that's what this video is about. On screen you can see the first version of our checklist. There's two formats for this, one in Excel and one in PDF version, which you can download, and the link is at the end of this video and in the description. When we use these in the field, we actually use them in an application called Preflight, which is one we use for aviation. And we have a custom version of this built into Preflight. But as that's not so common for everybody, these two versions should let you use it as a paper-based checklist or cut and paste the text into whatever checklist application you use. The Excel version has the option to have ticks at the side, of course, when you've checked off each item, which I would encourage to do. It's very easy to miss an item, get distracted and forget an item. So it's very, very useful to tick them off to avoid any kind of problems like that. So without wasting any more of your time, let's have a quick look at what we've got. We have a set of checklists here, a pre-departure checklist, our personal minimums, pre-flight checklist, a flight checklist, and landing and shutdown checklists. The most extensive is a pre-departure checklist, and this consists of the following items. Checking your drone is present, intact. It's useful and important to inspect your drone to make sure there's no damage from your last flight or from storage. Check the drone batteries, make sure you've got as many as you need, make sure they're charged, and make sure the one you're going to use is properly installed. Drone SD card, and of course we've managed to forget this once already, so it's an important one. Make sure your SD card is of the right size, the right type, and cleaned and installed in the drone. And you double check to see if you have one in the goggles. If you're using an SD card in the goggles, which we do, we leave an SD card in the goggles all the time, just in case we need it later on. Check the camera, check it's installed properly, check it's got some free movement, and make sure you've removed the gimbal cover. Check sure you've got your control sticks installed in the controller and your goggles are ready, the antennas are screwed in. We've also had a case of flying the drone without antennas. Make sure the straps are appropriate and set to size, lenses are clean. You do of course know you have to keep these lenses outside the sun, so you might want to keep your goggles in a bag if you're operating in a very sunny place or in a place with poor cloud cover. Check your goggle batteries and cable, make sure they're installed and charged. Check your props. You should have a full set of props, and we always carry a set of spares, one of each type. It's worthwhile checking your firmware periodically, and that includes the drone, but it also includes the batteries, the goggles, and the controller. On one flight, we've taken the drone out, and we found that the firmware of the batteries needed updating. Not a big deal, we can do it in the field, but it did take several minutes of time to do that. We check again that all of our batteries are charged once everything's installed and set up. If we need an ND filter, we install that. We have takeoff pads. We don't always use them, but if we do, we make sure we've got them packed. And other camera equipment. We often record our operators doing work and other cameras in the field. Safety equipment for us, this would include as a minimum a reflective jacket, but it often includes safety spectacles, safety helmets, safety shoes, but just depending on where we're working. And other support equipment. We sometimes take tables, chairs, and other monitoring equipment with us. You need to check the location. It's good to do a little bit of search online on some online maps. Very good these days. Check the location. We have a range of aviation applications, and we always check location to airfields and other points, especially helifields, helipads, because they're often not indicated on a lot of more generalist maps. And then finally, we'll be getting a weather briefing. The next checklist we have is personal minimums, and these are company minimums set for flying drones. We have max wind speed of 2 knots, max temperature of 40 degrees C, and minimum distance from airfield of 10 kilometers. And we need a clear launch area. Now, in our aviation checklists, we also have things like the I'm Safe checklist to make sure the pilot is ready. And we're still debating whether to include those inside this checklist. So we'd welcome any views and opinions in the comments. So the next one is our pre-flight checklist, another extensive checklist here. We do another battery check and check that the gimbal cover is removed. Now this is important if you're doing your pre-flight checklists at a different time than you did your pre-departure checklists. So typically we'll do a pre-departure checklist in the morning before an afternoon flight, or the day before for a morning flight. And so unless you're doing the two similar time, then it's important to do another check of the batteries and make sure your gimbal cover is removed. It's very easy to launch without removing the gimbal cover. Installing the props and then checking the props. So we've had a case where the props were installed in the wrong location before. It's pretty obvious on DJI drones, but sometimes these things do happen, and it can result in a tip over of your drone. So we like to double check that. Make sure the props are tight and secure. We've had no issue with the DJI props. They are pretty well fitting to the FPV drone at least. So usually no issue, but it's a good thing to check. Select launch site. Now we're talking more specifically now. The launch site has to be specific. It has to be flat, clear of any debris, and clear of any overhead obstructions, just in case we want to use the auto land or return to home function. Connect antennas to goggles. We've had a case where the drone was flown without connecting the antennas. It still works, but the range is quite limited, so make sure you connect those. Connect the power cable and batteries to the goggles. We've had an incident where the batteries kept in somebody's pocket, put down the goggles, and then they walked off to pick up the drone and dragged the goggles along the floor. It was very easy to happen with these DJI FPV goggles. I don't like the design of the external battery. It has advantages, but it leads to it's one more thing to get wrong. So it's not our preferred option. So we've got a new clip for the back of our goggles. We put our battery in the attached to the goggles strap now to avoid this issue happening. The radio antenna, the controller antenna, you need to extend that. Make sure it's in the right position, give you a good range. Check the area above again. Make sure you're not taking off into any flock of birds or anything like that. Turn on all batteries, set flight mode and limits, check other settings, especially the safety settings. Our next checklist we call launch and flight. The first item is we do a rotor on call and we start up the aircraft. We launch and do a low hover until the GPS is acquired. We select a test altitude. This is typically above head height or above tree height, whichever's the highest around you. And we check flight controls. We determine the return battery level. So we set a battery level, what our minimum battery is going to be for returning to home. This is kind of a safety margin that we have, and we just to make sure that nothing goes wrong and that we've got a predetermined position when we start returning to home and restart the operations. Our final checklist, we've combined landing and shutdown. Check landing area, announce landing. Once we've landed, we turn off all batteries, pack away controller, check goggles, batteries and cables, make sure they're all packed away, check motor temperature and remove props, pack props, remove and pack the antennas, pack goggles, pack drone, close and secure case. Okay, I hope you found that useful. We are still developing this checklist. We would appreciate or welcome any comments that you might have, any ideas or suggestions. We will always keep the latest version in the links in the description for this video, but following this, as you can see on the screen, there is the link to the first version of this checklist. Just to say again, as we change and update this checklist from this first version, we will continue to put the latest links in the description of the video. Thank you very much, and see you next time.